The crystal chandelier at the Plaza Hotel wasn't the only thing shattering that night. So was Marcus Thorne's future, though he was too arrogant to hear the sound of it yet. He stood in the center of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in one hand and divorce papers in the other, smiling at the woman who had quietly built his entire life. He thought he was publicly discarding a plain, boring housewife to upgrade to his younger, flashier mistress. He didn't know that the woman wiping tears from her eyes wasn't just Ellie. She was Eleanor St. James, the sole heiress to a banking empire that owned the very ground he was standing on. He wasn't signing a divorce, he was signing his own eviction from high society. The December wind whipped down Fifth Avenue, biting and cruel, but inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, the air was warm, scented with pine, expensive perfume, and the distinct, metallic tang of ambition. This was the annual gala for Thorne and Associates, the architectural firm Marcus Thorne had built from the ground up, or so he believed. In reality, the foundation of his success was sitting quietly at table 9, wearing a vintage navy dress that Marcus had called frumpy just hours before. Eleanor Ellie Thorne sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching her husband work the room. Marcus was handsome in a way that had curdled over the years. His charm, once boyish and eager, had hardened into a sleek, corporate veneer. He was laughing loudly at a joke made by the CEO of BlackRock, a man Marcus had been desperate to impress for 3 years. Ellie took a sip of water. She knew why the CEO was laughing. She knew that the random encounter that led to their introduction last week had been carefully orchestrated by her, a simple text message sent to an old family friend. Marcus didn't know that. Marcus thought he was a self-made genius. "He looks happy," a voice purred beside her. Ellie didn't flinch. She turned to see Sarah Miller standing there. Sarah was 24, an interior designer at the firm, and draped in a red silk gown that cost more than Ellie's entire visible wardrobe. Sarah was the upgrade, the worst-kept secret in New York. "He does," Ellie said softly. "Success suits him." "It does," Sarah replied, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "It's a shame, really. Some people grow together and some people are just anchors, aren't they, Ellie? Holding the ship back." Ellie looked at the young woman. There was no anger in her heart, only a tired, heavy resignation. "Be careful, Sarah. Ships that cut their anchors often drift into storms they aren't prepared for." Sarah laughed, a sharp, tinkling sound. "I think Marcus prefers the storm. It's exciting, unlike domestic bliss." Before Ellie could respond, the microphone feedback squealed. The room went silent. Marcus was on stage. He looked radiant, flushed with the success of the night and the champagne. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus boomed, his voice projecting confidence, "thank you all for coming. Tonight is a celebration of record profits, of new horizons. But it's also a night of truth, a night of new beginnings." Ellie felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. He wasn't going to do this. Not here. Not in front of 300 of New York's elite. "I've learned this year that life is too short to settle for mediocrity," Marcus continued, his eyes scanning the crowd until they locked on Ellie. There was no warmth in his gaze, only a dismissive pity. "To build greatness, you need a partner who understands greatness, a partner who shines." He motioned to someone off stage. A lawyer, a man Ellie recognized as Marcus's personal attorney, stepped forward and handed him a thick manila envelope. Marcus stepped off the stage and began walking toward table 9. The crowd parted. The silence was deafening. Every eye was on Ellie. She didn't move. She didn't tremble. She just watched the man she had loved for 7 years, the man she had secretly funded, protected, and elevated, walk toward her with a loaded gun in the form of legal documents. "Ellie," Marcus said when he reached the table. He didn't lower his voice. He wanted an audience. He wanted to show Sarah and the world that he was a man who took what he wanted. "It's over. I think we both know it has been for a long time." He dropped the envelope onto the white tablecloth. It landed with a heavy thud that echoed in the silence. "These are the divorce papers," Marcus said, his voice steady. "I've been generous. You keep the house in Queens. You keep the car. I just want my freedom. And I want it tonight." A gasp rippled through the room. Public divorces were tacky, but this was something else. This was a ritual humiliation. Sarah stepped up beside Marcus, slipping her arm through his. She beamed, a victor claiming her prize. "Sign them, Ellie," Sarah whispered, loud enough for the table to hear. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Ellie looked at the papers. Then she looked at Marcus. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure? Once I signed these, there is no going back. Not for me. For you." Marcus scoffed. "That's the point, Ellie. I don't want to go back. I'm moving forward, with Sarah, with people who belong in this world." He gestured around the opulent ballroom, the gold leaf molding, the velvet curtains, the history soaked into the walls. "I belong here. You belong in the background. Sign the papers." Ellie looked down. A single tear escaped, hot and stinging, tracing a path down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of heartbreak for losing him. That heart had broken years ago. It was a tear for the tragedy of what he was about to do to himself. "Do you have a pen?" she asked. Marcus pulled a Mont Blanc from his pocket, a pen she had bought him for his birthday 3 years ago. He handed it to her. Ellie took the pen. Her hand shook slightly, then steadied. She flipped to the back page. She didn't read the terms. She knew Marcus. He would have left her with nothing if he could, but he probably gave her the bare minimum to make himself look fair to his peers. She pressed the nib to the paper. The ink flowed black and permanent. Eleanor V. Thorne. She capped the pen and placed it gently on the envelope. "Done," she said. Marcus snatched the papers up, checking the signature as if he expected a trick. "Good," he said, letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He turned to the crowd, raising the papers like a trophy. "To new beginnings." There was a smattering of awkward applause, mostly from his junior employees. The heavy hitters, the CEOs, the investors, the old money families, stayed silent. They were watching Ellie. Ellie stood up. She smoothed her dress. "I'll leave you to your celebration, Marcus." "You do that?" Marcus said, already turning his back on her to kiss Sarah. Ellie grabbed her clutch and turned to walk away. The walk to the double doors felt like a mile. She could feel the eyes burning into her back, the whispers starting to hiss like steam. Poor thing. So embarrassing. He upgraded. She reached the massive oak doors of the ballroom. She pushed them open, stepping out of the warmth and into the cool, quiet marble hallway of the hotel lobby. She didn't stop walking. She headed straight for the exit. But as she passed the concierge desk, a man in an immaculate tuxedo stepped out, blocking her path. It was Mr. Henderson, the general manager of the plaza, a man who was known to make senators wait and celebrities beg for reservations. He bowed. Low. Lower than he had bowed for the Saudi prince who checked in last week. "Mrs. Thorne," he started, then corrected himself, his voice dropping to a respectful murmur. "Ms. St. James, my deepest apologies for the disturbance. Shall I have the car brought around? Or would you prefer to retire to the penthouse suite? We've kept it prepared for you, as per your grandfather's standing instructions." Ellie stopped. She took a deep breath, wiping the last tear from her face. When she looked up, the plain housewife was gone. In her place was the woman who had learned business at the knee of Arthur St. James, the man who practically invented modern venture capital. "The car, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice like clipped steel, "and cancel the bill for the Thorne and Associates party." Mr. Henderson blinked. "Cancel it, ma'am." "No," Ellie corrected herself, a small, cold smile touching her lips. "Don't cancel it. Just ensure the invoice is delivered to Mr. Thorne personally at the end of the night. Full price. No friends and family discount. And Mr. Henderson." "Yes, Ms. St. James." "Inform security that as of midnight, Mr. Thorne is no longer welcome on any St. James property. That includes this hotel, the St. James Tower where his office is located, and the Hamptons estate he thinks he's taking his mistress to this weekend." Mr. Henderson's eyes widened, then a look of professional satisfaction settled on his face. He had never liked Marcus Thorne. "It will be my absolute pleasure, ma'am." Ellie walked out into the cold New York night. The doorman, recognizing her instantly, scrambled to open the door of a waiting Rolls-Royce Phantom, not the Toyota Camry Marcus thought she drove. As she slid into the leather back seat, she looked back at the hotel. Marcus was still in there, toasting his freedom. He had no idea that the winter had just begun. The hangover was brutal, but the adrenaline of victory was sweeter. Marcus woke up in the executive suite he had booked for himself and Sarah. The sun was streaming in over Central Park, a view that cost a fortune. Sarah was still asleep, her arm thrown over her eyes. Marcus sat up, stretching. He felt lighter. The dead weight was gone. He was free. He grabbed his phone. 45 missed calls. Popularity, he thought with a smirk. Everyone wants a piece of the new king. He unlocked the phone. The first text wasn't a congratulation. It was from his CFO, Gary. Urgent. Call me. Now. Marcus frowned. Gary was a panic merchant. He ignored it and opened his email. The first email was from the Plaza Hotel, billing department. Marcus chuckled. Probably just the receipt for the champagne. He opened it. His eyes scanned the total, and his breath hitched. 145,000. "What?" Marcus choked. He shook his head. "No, that's wrong. We have the corporate discount. We have the Ellie discount." He didn't know why they had a discount, only that whenever Ellie booked things, they were 80% cheaper. He assumed it was because she was good with coupons or had a friend in catering. He dialed the front desk. "This is Marcus Thorne. There's a mistake on my bill. We have a standing rate." "One moment, Mr. Thorne." The voice was cool, detached. "Ah, yes. I see the note here. The discount was applied, courtesy of the St. James Family Trust. That authorization was revoked at 9:15 p.m. last night." "St. James." "What? Who is that?" Marcus snapped. "I don't know any St. James." "That is the discount provider, sir. The card on file has been declined for the full amount. We will need an alternative method of payment before checkout." Marcus hung up, his hands shaking. 145,000. That was nearly all the liquid cash he had in the company operating account. He had spent big on this party because he was sure the BlackRock deal would land this morning. The BlackRock deal. He scrambled to call the contact, David Sterling. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. Then a text from David came through. "Marcus, we've decided to go in a different direction. The proposal lacked the stability we require. Good luck." "No," Marcus whispered. "No, no, no." We shook hands. He shook Sarah awake. Sarah, get up." "Hmm? What is it, baby?" she mumbled. "We need to leave. Now. There's been a mix-up with the bill." They dressed in a hurry. Marcus's head was pounding. He needed to get to the office. He needed to fix this. When they arrived at the St. James Tower, a gleaming spire of glass in Midtown, his keycard didn't work at the turnstile. Beep, beep, beep. Access denied. "Stupid thing," Marcus muttered, slamming the card against the reader. "Hey, Jerry!" He waved at the security guard he had walked past every day for 5 years. "Buzz me in." Jerry didn't smile. Jerry didn't wave. Jerry walked out from behind the desk, accompanied by 2 large men in dark suits. "Mr. Thorne," Jerry said, his voice flat, "I need you to hand over your badge." "Excuse me?" Marcus laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "I own the company on the 40th floor, Jerry. Let me in." "You own the company, sir. You lease the space," one of the suits said. He handed Marcus a letter. "This is an eviction notice. Clause 14B of your lease agreement. The landlord reserves the right to terminate the lease immediately upon conduct deemed detrimental to the St. James family reputation." "I didn't do anything to the St. James family. I don't even know who they are," Marcus screamed, veins popping in his neck. People in the lobby were staring. Sarah was shrinking back, looking embarrassed. "You divorced her, sir," Jerry said quietly. Marcus froze. The lobby noise seemed to suck away into a vacuum. "What?" "The landlord," Jerry said, pointing a thumb upward toward the penthouse, toward the sky, toward God. "The building is owned by St. James Holdings. The primary shareholder is Eleanor St. James." Marcus stared at him. The name bounced around his skull. Eleanor. Ellie. St. James. Ellie wasn't just a housewife from Queens. She wasn't just the woman who clipped coupons and made his lunch. "Ellie," Marcus whispered. "Mrs. Thorne, Ms. St. James, owns the building, sir," Jerry said. "She owns the plaza where you had your party. She owns the land your house in the Hamptons sits on. And she's given you 1 hour to collect your personal effects from the office, escorted." Marcus felt the floor tilt. He looked at Sarah. She was looking at her phone, scrolling frantically. "Marcus," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Look at the news." He grabbed her phone. TMZ headline: "Billionaire heiress dumped at Christmas party. Architect Marcus Thorne discards secret St. James heiress for interior designer." Below it was a picture of Ellie walking out of the plaza, looking regal, with the caption, "The $50 billion walk of shame for him." Marcus dropped the phone. It cracked on the marble floor. He had thrown away a diamond to pick up a rhinestone, and the whole world was watching. Marcus sat in his office, or what used to be his office, while the 2 security guards watched him pack a cardboard box. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped his stapler twice. "You can't do this," he muttered, more to himself than the guards. "I have rights. I have a lease." "Lease was month to month, sir," one of the guards deadpanned. Ms. St. James was very lenient with the terms previously. Marcus squeezed his eyes shut. Lenient. That was an understatement. He paid $4,000 a month for a 10,000-square-foot office in Midtown Manhattan. He had bragged to his friends about his negotiating skills. He told everyone he shark-tanked the landlord. The landlord was his wife. She had been subsidizing his ego for 5 years. "Mr. Thorne?" Marcus looked up. It was Gary, his CFO. Gary looked like he hadn't slept. He was holding a stack of files. "Marcus, the bank just called." "Which one?" "All of them. Chase, Citi, Wells. They're calling in the loans." "They can't call in the loans. We're current on payments," Marcus shouted. "We were current because we had a guarantor," Gary said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I never understood who it was." The signature was always just a trust fund, LLC. I looked it up this morning. The guarantor was the Aurora Trust. Ellie's middle name is Aurora, Marcus said, feeling the bile rise in his throat. They've withdrawn the guarantee, Marcus. The banks view us as high risk now. They want the $2 million line of credit paid back by close of business today. I don't have $2 million. I spent the cash on the party. The party that we now have a $145,000 invoice for, Gary reminded him. Marcus, payroll is Friday. If we don't have that credit line, we can't pay the staff, Marcus finished. The door to the office flew open. Sarah stormed in. She wasn't the doting mistress anymore. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. "My credit card," she hissed, slamming her gold Amex on the desk. "It was declined at Saks. I tried to buy a stress relief bag. Declined." "Sarah, not now," Marcus snapped. "Not now! You gave me a supplementary card on the company account. You said it had no limit." "The company has no money, Sarah," Marcus roared. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean Ellie. Ellie was the money. All of it. The cheap rent, the loans, the connections. It was all her." Sarah's face went through a complex gymnastics routine. Confusion, realization, horror, and finally, calculation. She looked at the cardboard box Marcus was packing. She looked at the security guards. "So, you're broke?" she asked. "It's a temporary setback," Marcus lied, straightening his tie. "I'm a brilliant architect. My talent is what built this firm. Not Ellie's money. I can rebuild. We can rebuild." He reached out for her hand. Sarah took a step back. She looked at his hand like it was a dead fish. I can't do this, Marcus," she said. "I signed up for a power couple. I didn't sign up for this. Being the mistress of a bankrupt laughingstock? It's not a good look for my brand." "Your brand?" Marcus laughed incredulously. "You're an interior designer with 500 Instagram followers. I made you, and now you're unmaking me," she spat. "I'm going to my sister's. Don't call me until you fix this." She turned on her heel and walked out. Marcus watched her go. He expected to feel heartbreak, but all he felt was a dull, aching panic. "Box is full, sir," the guard said. "Time to go." Marcus grabbed the box. He walked out of his corner office, past the rows of cubicles. His employees, the ones he had lectured about mediocrity just last night, were watching him. Some looked worried about their paychecks. Others, the ones he had belittled and overworked, were openly smirking. He reached the elevator. He pressed the button. When the doors opened, he didn't see an empty car. He saw her. Ellie was standing in the elevator. But it wasn't the Ellie he knew. Gone was the fraying cardigan and the sensible shoes. She was wearing a tailored white power suit that looked like it cost more than his car. Her hair was cut into a sharp, chic bob. She wore sunglasses, even indoors. Beside her stood a man Marcus recognized from the covers of Forbes, Alexander Sterling, the ruthless CEO of Sterling Global, and, if rumors were true, one of the most eligible bachelors in Europe. Marcus froze. "Ellie?" Ellie lowered her sunglasses. Her eyes were cool, blue ice. "Hello, Marcus. You're blocking the door." "Ellie, please, we need to talk. This is insane. You can't just ruin me like this." "I didn't ruin you, Marcus," Ellie said calmly. "I simply stopped saving you. There's a difference." "I'm your husband." "Well, I was. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything to me," she said, her voice wavering for just a microsecond before hardening again. "I hid who I was because I wanted to be sure you loved me, not the St. James fortune. I wanted to build a life with you, brick by brick. But you didn't want a partner, Marcus. You wanted a fan. And when you got bored of the fan, you fired her. She pressed the close door button. "Wait, Ellie!" Marcus lunged forward. Alexander Sterling stepped in front of her, his hand coming up to catch Marcus's chest. Alexander didn't push. He just held Marcus there with effortless strength. "Touch her," Alexander said, his voice a low growl. "And you won't just be bankrupt. You'll be in prison." Marcus stumbled back. The doors slid shut, severing him from the only lifeline he had ever really had. As the elevator ascended to the penthouse, Alexander looked at Ellie. "You okay?" Ellie took a deep breath. She didn't cry this time. "I will be," she said. "Now let's go buy his company." New York City does not mourn the fallen. It feeds on them. 3 days after the Plaza disaster, Marcus Thorne sat in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. It wasn't his sleek, glass-walled office with the view of the Hudson. It was a rented workspace in a damp building in the garment district, the kind of place where startups went to die. Across from him sat Victor Vance, a venture capitalist known in the industry as the Butcher. Vance was a heavy-set man with a cigar permanently etched into the corner of his mouth, even when it wasn't lit. He wore a suit that was expensive, but ill-fitting, straining against his bulk. "It's a low ball, Marcus," Vance grunted, sliding a single sheet of paper across the scarred wooden table. "Take it or leave it." Marcus stared at the number. 4.5 million. "This is an insult," Marcus rasped. His voice was hoarse. He hadn't slept in 72 hours. He was wearing the same suit he'd worn yesterday. "The intellectual property alone is worth 20. The Skyline project in Dubai? That's my design. That contract is worth 10 million in fees." "The Skyline project is on hold," Vance said, leaning back and lacing his fingers behind his head. "I made some calls. The developers are nervous. They heard the lead architect is currently homeless and facing a forensic audit by the IRS. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "I am not homeless. I am staying at a hotel." He was staying at a Motel 6 in New Jersey. It was all he could afford after his credit cards were frozen. "Look, kid," Vance said, his eyes narrowing. "You have no liquidity. Your staff hasn't been paid. I heard your top 3 engineers resigned this morning to go work for Sterling Global. You are a captain of a sinking ship trying to sell tickets to the buffet. I'm offering to buy the scrap metal." Marcus felt the walls closing in. He needed the money. He needed to pay off the bank loan to get the liens off his personal accounts. If he took the $4.5 million, he could pay the $2 million debt, pay the back wages, and have enough left over to start a small boutique firm. He could rebuild. He could show Ellie. "Fine," Marcus whispered. "I'll sign. But I want a clause. I stay on as creative director. My name stays on the door." Vance chuckled, a wet, rattling sound. "Sure, Marcus. We'll keep the name. For now." Marcus signed. He felt a piece of his soul wither as the ink dried. He handed the paper to Vance. "Pleasure doing business," Vance said, standing up. He pulled out his phone. "It's done. Wire the funds." Marcus's phone pinged. The money was there. He let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for a week. He was safe. He was diminished, but he was alive. "So," Marcus said, trying to regain some of his old swagger, "when do we meet for the strategy session? I have some ideas on how to pivot the brand." The door to the conference room opened. "We won't be needing a strategy session, Marcus," a familiar voice said. Marcus spun around. Ellie walked in. She was wearing a trench coat the color of storm clouds and stilettos that clicked ominously on the linoleum floor. Flanking her was Alexander Sterling and a team of lawyers. "Ellie?" Marcus stammered. "What are you doing here? This is a private meeting with my investor." Vance walked over to Ellie and nodded respectfully. Ms. St. James, the acquisition is complete. The assets of Thorne and Associates have been transferred to the holding company. Marcus looked from Vance to Ellie, his brain short-circuiting. You know him. Mr. Vance has managed the St. James Distress Fund for 20 years, Ellie said, her voice devoid of emotion. She didn't look at Marcus. She looked at the room, inspecting it with distaste. He buys companies that are failing due to incompetence, strips them, and repurposes them. Good work, Victor. You bought me, Marcus whispered. You bought my company? No, Marcus, Ellie corrected him, finally meeting his eyes. I bought my company back. You see, the initial seed money you used to start the firm 5 years ago. The angel investor you never met. That was me. The loans? Me. The clients? Me. I just bought the shell. And now, I'm firing the management. She nodded to one of the lawyers, who stepped forward and handed Marcus a letter. Termination for cause, the lawyer said. Gross negligence, reputational damage, and financial mismanagement. You are relieved of your duties effectively immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. You can't do this. I have a contract. Vance said I could stay on as creative director. Read the fine print, Marcus, Vance said, lighting his cigar. Clause 7. Role contingent on majority shareholder approval. He pointed his cigar at Ellie. She's the majority shareholder. She voted no. Marcus fell back into his chair. He looked at Ellie, really looked at her. He searched for the woman who used to rub his feet after a long day. The woman who would make him soup when he had a cold. Why? He asked, his voice breaking. Why go this far? You have everything. Why do you need to destroy me? Ellie walked up to the table. She placed her hands flat on the wood and leaned in. The scent of her perfume, jasmine and rain, filled his nose, a ghost of a memory. Because, Marcus, she said softly, you didn't just break my heart, that I could have forgiven, but you humiliated me. You made me small so you could feel big. You took my love and turned it into a stepping stone. And worst of all, she paused, her eyes hardening. You took credit for the Library of Light. Marcus went pale. The Library of Light was the project that had put him on the map. It had won the Pritzker Prize for Emerging Architects. I designed that, Marcus lied, but his voice was thin. You couldn't design a doghouse without a template, Ellie said. I drew those sketches on our honeymoon in Florence. You found them in my sketchbook, copied them into CAD, and put your name on them. I let you do it. I let you take the credit because I wanted you to feel proud. I wanted you to feel like the genius you thought you were. She straightened up, towering over him. I'm taking my name back, Marcus, and I'm taking my designs back. The new firm will be called St. James and Sterling. And you? You are nothing. She turned and walked out. Alexander Sterling lingered for a moment. He looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and disgust. If it helps, Alexander said. She cried for 3 days before she decided to do this. She didn't want to hurt you. You forced her hand. Then he was gone. Marcus was left alone in the cold, rented room with a check for $4.5 million that suddenly felt like blood money, and the realization that he had never really been the architect of his own life. Marcus Thorne was down, but his ego refused to let him stay there. Rage is a powerful fuel, and Marcus was running on high octane. He had $4.5 million. It wasn't billionaire money, but it was enough to buy a megaphone. 2 weeks later, the teaser trailer dropped for the prime-time special interview with Diane Sawyer. The caption read, The Billionaire. Bully, how a secret heiress destroyed her husband. Marcus sat in the makeup chair, looking somber. He had hired a PR crisis team. They told him to dress modestly, no suits, a cashmere sweater, slacks, a look of approachable intellectual. "You're the victim," his PR manager, a sharp-toothed woman named Jessica, told him. "She's the establishment. She's the 1%. You're the working man who was duped by a woman hiding her assets. We play the fraud angle. We play the emotional manipulation angle." The interview aired on a Tuesday night. "She lied to me every day of our marriage," Marcus said on camera, wiping away a fake tear. "I came home to a woman I thought was a school teacher. I supported us. I worked 18-hour days to build my firm, thinking we needed the money. Meanwhile, she was sitting on billions. She watched me struggle. She watched me stress about mortgage payments, while she probably had diamonds in the cereal box. It's sociopathic." The public reaction was mixed. The internet loves a villain, but they also love a victim. The hashtag #WaPoorMarcus started trending. People began to question Ellie. Why did she hide it? Is it fair to deceive your spouse about your net worth? For a week, Marcus felt like he was winning. He was getting book deal offers. A reality TV show reached out. Then came the counterstrike. It didn't come from Ellie. It came from the archives. On the morning of the Architectural Digest Gala, where Marcus had hoped to make his comeback, a video was leaked to the New York Times. It was security footage from the Thorne and Associates office, dated 3 years prior. The video showed Marcus screaming at a junior architect. He was throwing blueprints, his face red with rage. "You call this design? It's garbage. You're worthless. I should fire you and make sure you never work in this city again." Then the camera angle shifted. It showed Ellie entering the office. She picked up the garbage blueprints. She sat down with the crying junior architect. She took a red pen and gently corrected the lines. "It's not garbage." Ellie's voice was clear on the audio. "It's structural genius. He's just threatened by it. Let's fix the load-bearing wall, and it will be perfect." The video cut to another clip. Marcus at a dinner party, drunk, laughing with his friends. "Ellie? God, no. She's a placeholder. She's useful. Keeps the house clean. But let's be real. She's about as exciting as beige paint. Once the firm hits 50 million, I'm trading up." The internet exploded. Poor Marcus died instantly. Team Ellie rose from the ashes. Marcus was sitting in his hotel room when the backlash hit. His phone started buzzing, not with offers but with hate mail. The book deal was rescinded. The reality show ghosted him. But the final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected source. Sarah Miller. She posted a TikTok video. She looked disheveled, sitting on the floor of her sister's apartment. "I want to apologize to Eleanor St. James," Sarah said, looking into the camera. "I didn't know. Marcus told me she was abusive. He told me she was leeching off him. He showed me fake bank statements. He told me he designed the Library of Light. But I found the truth." She held up a sketchbook. It was old, tattered, leather-bound. "I forgot I had this. I stole it from their house when we were moving Marcus's stuff. It's Ellie's sketchbook from 2018. The drawings. They're all here. Every building Marcus claimed credit for. He's a fraud. He's a liar. And he owes me $15,000 for the therapy I need after dating him." The video had 20 million views in 3 hours. Marcus threw his phone against the wall. It shattered. He stood up, breathing heavily. He was done. The industry wouldn't touch him. His reputation was radioactive, but he had one card left, a dark, desperate card. He knew where Ellie was going to be tonight, the St. James Winter Solstice Ball. It was a masquerade. Masks. Anonymity. He went to his suitcase and pulled out a black tuxedo. He didn't have an invitation, but he knew the service entrance codes. He had designed the renovation of that ballroom 2 years ago. "If I'm going down," Marcus whispered to the empty room, "I'm going to make sure everyone hears the crash." The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was transformed into a winter wonderland. Icicles made of Swarovski crystals hung from the ceiling. The elite of New York moved across the dance floor in masks of feathers, gold, and velvet. Ellie stood on the balcony overlooking the crowd. She wore a gown of midnight blue velvet, dusted with crushed diamonds that caught the light like stars. Her mask was a delicate silver fox, covering the upper half of her face. "You look like a queen surveying her kingdom," Alexander said, appearing beside her. He wore a simple black domino mask, but his presence was unmistakable. "I feel like an imposter," Ellie admitted, sipping her champagne. "All this. The money. The power. It was easier when I was just Ellie from Queens, when my biggest worry was whether the pot roast would burn." "That Ellie was hiding," Alexander said, turning to face her. "This Ellie is shining, and the world is better for it. We just closed the deal on the affordable housing project in the Bronx. Your design. It's going to house 1,000 families." Ellie smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "That was the goal, wasn't it? To build things that matter." "May I have this dance?" Alexander asked, extending his hand. Ellie hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "You may." They moved to the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a waltz. They spun, and for a moment, Ellie forgot about Marcus, about the divorce, about the pain. She felt safe. She felt seen. Suddenly, the music stopped. A screech of feedback tore through the room. The crowd gasped. All eyes turned to the stage. Marcus Thorne stood at the microphone. He wasn't wearing a mask. He looked wild, his tie undone, his hair messy. He had clearly bypassed security. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus shouted, swaying slightly, "welcome to the masquerade. How fitting, because everyone here is wearing a mask, aren't they? Especially our hostess." Security guards started moving toward the stage, but Marcus held up a hand. "Don't touch me. I have a right to speak. I am the husband. I am the victim." He pointed a shaking finger at Ellie, who had frozen on the dance floor. "You think she's a saint?" Marcus yelled. "She's a monster. She watched me fail. She sat on a mountain of gold and watched me drown. Who does that? Who tests their husband like a lab rat?" The room was silent. People were whispering. Phones were out. Recording. Ellie let go of Alexander's hand. "Stay here," she said softly. "Ellie, don't," Alexander warned. "Let security handle him." "No," Ellie said, stepping forward. "He wants attention. I'll give it to him." She walked toward the stage. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. She didn't look angry. She looked sad. She reached the stage and took the stairs, standing just a few feet from Marcus. He looked small, up close. Broken. "Marcus," she said, her voice amplified by the microphone as she took a handheld one from a stand. "I didn't test you. I trusted you." "You lied," Marcus spat. "I omitted," she corrected. "I told you I had a small inheritance. You never asked how much. You never asked about my family. You were so busy talking about yourself, you never once asked me what my maiden name was. You just assumed." She took a step closer. "And yes, I had money. But money doesn't make a marriage, Marcus. Kindness does. Respect does. I gave you my heart. I gave you my designs. I gave you my life. And you gave me papers to sign at a party." "I made a mistake," Marcus cried, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Take me back, Ellie. We can be a power couple. With your money and my face, we could rule this city." The crowd murmured in disgust. Even in his apology, he was negotiating. Ellie shook her head slowly. "That's the tragedy, Marcus. You still think this is a transaction. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper. You wanted a twist? Here it is. She unfolded the paper. This is a deed. It's the deed to the house in Queens. The one we lived in, the one you hated. She held it out to him. It's yours. I bought it. I paid off the mortgage. I put it in your name. It's fully furnished. It's where you started, and it's where you're going to end up. Marcus stared at the paper. What? I'm not destroying you, Marcus, Ellie said, her voice ringing clear. I'm giving you a clean slate. You have the house. You have your $4.5 million. If you haven't spent it all on lawyers, go. Design something real. Build something that doesn't rely on my name or my money. Be the man you pretended to be. She turned to the security guards. Escort Mr. Thorne out. Gently. He's leaving. Marcus stood there, the deed in his hand. He looked at Ellie, radiant and untouchable. He looked at the crowd, who were looking at him with pity, not awe. He realized then that he had lost, not because she was richer, but because she was better. He lowered his head and walked off the stage. The silence followed him all the way to the exit. As the doors closed behind him, Alexander stepped up to Ellie. That was incredibly generous, he said. Ellie shrugged, watching the doors. He needs a home. I need closure. It was a fair trade. And now? Alexander asked. Ellie took off her mask and dropped it on the floor. Now, she said, turning to him with a smile that reached her eyes. We dance. 1 year later, the New York skyline had changed. It wasn't just the shifting seasons or the construction cranes dancing on the horizon. The very soul of the city's architectural world had shifted. At the center of this new era stood the St. James and Sterling Tower, a breathtaking spire of curved glass and sustainable steel that spiraled upward like a living vine seeking the sun. It was the tallest residential building in the Western Hemisphere, a physical testament to resilience. Tonight was the grand opening. The street below was a river of black limousines and flashing cameras. The air was crisp, smelling of impending snow and expensive cologne. Inside the atrium, under a vaulted ceiling that mimicked the constellations of the winter sky, Eleanor Ellie St. James stood at the center of the universe. She was no longer the woman who shrank into the corners of rooms. She was luminous. She wore a gown of champagne silk that draped elegantly over her changing figure, a visible, radiant sign of the new life growing within her. Alexander Sterling stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on the small of her back. He wasn't looking at the cameras. He was looking at her, a gaze so full of reverence that it made the socialites nearby whisper in envious tones. "Are you ready for the speech?" Alexander murmured, leaning in close. Ellie smiled, touching the diamond pendant at her throat, a gift from his mother, not bought with her own money. "I was born ready for this, Alex. I just needed someone to clear the debris so I could build." She stepped up to the podium. The hush that fell over the room was instant and respectful. There were no snickers, no whispers of boring Ellie. There was only awe. "Architecture is not about height," Ellie began, her voice resonating through the hall. "It is not about how much glass you can afford or how shiny the steel is. Architecture is about shelter. It is about creating a space where life can happen, where families are safe, and where the truth can live comfortably within the walls. For a long time, I lived in a house built on sand. It crumbled. But tonight, we stand on bedrock." Applause thundered. In the back of the room, the critics who had once lauded Marcus Thorne were now furiously taking notes on Ellie's genius. Outside, separated by 3 inches of reinforced glass and a lifetime of regret, a man stood on the sidewalk. Marcus Thorne pulled the collar of his rough canvas jacket up against the biting wind. He wasn't on the guest list. He wasn't even in the industry directory anymore. He was holding a thermos of lukewarm coffee, his hands rough and chapped from months of manual labor. After the clean slate Ellie had given him, Marcus had tried to start over. He had the money from the buyout, sure. But the reputation? That was gone. No reputable firm would hire the man who tried to con the St. James heiress. The $4.5 million had dwindled faster than he expected, eaten up by legal fees from investors suing him for his past fraudulent claims on the Library of Light, and settlements with former employees he had mistreated. He was now a site foreman for a mid-level renovation company in Jersey City. He spent his days yelling at contractors about drywall screws, and his nights in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled of takeout and loneliness. He looked up at the giant LED screen mounted above the entrance of the tower. It was broadcasting a live feed of the interior. He saw Ellie. He saw the way she commanded the room. He saw the intelligence he had ignored, the beauty he had called plain, and the strength he had mistaken for weakness. But then the camera angle widened. Marcus saw Alexander whisper something to her, and Ellie laughed. It was a free, unburdened laugh. And then Alexander placed a hand on her stomach. The breath left Marcus's body in a painful rush. She was pregnant. He stared at the screen, transfixed by the image of the life that could have been his. He remembered the nights Ellie had timidly asked if he wanted children. He remembered his answers. "Not now, Ellie. Children are a distraction. I need to focus on my legacy." "Legacy," Marcus whispered to the cold street, his voice cracking. What a joke. He had traded his wife, his future children, and his home for a brief affair with a woman who had blocked his number the moment the credit card declined, and a reputation that was now synonymous with failure. He had built a monument to his own ego, and it had collapsed on top of him. "Hey, buddy, move it along," a security guard grunted, stepping toward him. "Private event. No loitering." Marcus looked at the guard. He wanted to scream, "I used to be them. I used to be the one inside." But he wasn't. He was just a guy in work boots blocking the sidewalk. "I'm going," Marcus said, his voice hollow. He turned away from the light, the warmth, and the woman he had thrown away. He began the long walk to the subway station. As he descended into the dark, grimy underground, he realized the ultimate twist of his life story. Ellie hadn't destroyed him. She hadn't needed to lift a finger. She had simply removed the foundation she provided and let gravity do the rest. He was the architect of his own ruin, and that was a blueprint he would have to live with for the rest of his days. Above ground, the fireworks for the opening ceremony exploded into the night sky, painting the city in gold and silver. Ellie didn't look out the window to see them. She was too busy looking into Alexander's eyes, planning the nursery, planning the next tower, planning a life that was finally, truly her own. And that is how Eleanor St. James turned her tragedy into a triumph. She didn't just survive the betrayal, she redesigned her entire universe. Marcus Thorne learned the hardest lesson of all, that true worth isn't found in bank accounts or gala invites, but in the integrity of your soul. He chased the glitter and lost the gold. In the end, Ellie built an empire on love and truth, while Marcus had to rebuild himself from the rubble of his own ego. It's a reminder to us all. Be careful who you discard on your way to the top, because you might just meet them on your way down, and they might own the building. Wow, what a roller coaster. If Ellie's savage success and that final pregnancy reveal gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Do you think Marcus deserved his lonely fate, or should Ellie have forgiven him? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more stories of karma, revenge, and hidden billionaires, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a drama. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.